Reform Factors Live tonight. Coming to you in a very, very cold pool. We're going to be discussing the English Reformation, how Henry VIII politicized religion once again, creating an odd hybrid of Reformed faith and Protestantism known as Anglicanism. Caution! You're about to enter the no fishies in the chlorine-infested pool zone. The Reform Factor's on tonight. Alright, thank you for joining us at the Reform Factor. I'm your host, Peter Birdsall, coming to you live from Sanford, Florida in a very cold pool. Tonight's memo, we are discussing the English Reformation. Henry VIII wanted to leave the Catholic Church because he wanted to divorce his first wife, but the Pope did not let him divorce. So instead, Henry VIII distanced himself from the Catholic Church and set up himself as the head of the church in England. This caused problems because it being a Catholic nation was not used to son reform from the top down at the political structure. So there's for years a struggle between Catholicism and Protestantism. Eventually, at the death of Henry's son Edward, when Mary Tudor came to the throne, Catholicism came back and there was a bloody massacre. This pool's cold. And that's the memo. Joining me live tonight, Aaron Vogel, in the other end of the pool. Thank you for joining us, Aaron.
Happy to be here, Peter.
Are you really happy to be here?
This was a bad idea on my part.
All right, Mr. Vogel, could you please tell us a little about Henry VIII, the selfish, pompous, really fat king who liked to eat too much and kill his wives? Tell us a little bit about him and his reforming movements in England.
He was not a nice guy. I'll tell you that right now. Yeah, like Mr. Birdsall, like Mr. Birdsall mentioned, he enjoyed killing wives and pretty much doing whatever he wanted, and that was not good.
So he set certain people in high positions, such as the Archbishop of Canterbury, to try and reform the church from the top down, but the people did not like this one bit. Could you tell us a little bit about the masses at the time and how religion eventually became to have a bad taste in people's mouths?
Well, Mr. Birdsall, the people of this time were struggling, and at this time they were even resorting to hiding things in hidden rooms, things that they cherished from the Catholic faith, and so on. And there was a lot of tyranny in this time, not only from this leader, but from many others.
All right, could you tell us a little bit about Bloody Mary and her trying to get the nation to revert back to Catholicism?
Well, Bloody Mary, she was doing a lot of killing, which her name comes from, Bloody Mary, not to be confused with the drink, obviously. At this time, she was killing Puritans. She was trying to convert them and change the entire scene of this time. By death, obviously. Killing.
Obviously trying to revert the nation back to Catholicism. Literally 25 years of the Protestant movement just gone down the drain.
That is correct.
All right. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Vogie. Up next on The Factor, I don't know how we're going to do this, but around the pool discussion. Now, Isaac Henderson was not brave enough to get into the pool. Tell us Anglicanism, sir.
Anglicanism isn't strictly Protestantism as far as Henry VIII is concerned. Henry VIII is trying to, he's trying to create a national stability through a national church, and through Anglicanism, it's really a name. Anglicanism at the time was just a modified version of Catholicism, which had Henry as the head, as the federal head of the church, if you will. So, in order to create a national unity that still relied on religious coherence, he basically just, kicked the Pope out and put himself out. I feel like I'm being repetitive.
What was it?
Well, at this point, the British Isles were being isolated because the only commune that they would have is with the other reformers is through, a national church means. And when they are isolated from the papacy, then that I suppose you could say that sort of caused a rift between the rest of the church and them, which of course opens up opportunities for Protestantism, as far as Luther and Zwingli is concerned, to flourish in Britain. But this didn't necessarily happen until all of the exiles from Mary, quote-unquote Bloody Mary, until after her persecution of the Protestants happened. Several well-known reformers of Britain, notably John Knox and others, they were exiled to the mainland of Europe, where they were actually experiencing what a good Protestant church was and what actual Bible-believing Christians were doing at the time. And so whenever Mary, Queen of Scots, or not Mary, Queen of Scots, Mary, Bloody Mary's reign ends, and they all return at the reign of Elizabeth, they're not relying on a political church. They're actually bringing Reformed values and doctrines and teachings back into the nation.
Welcome back to the Reformed Factors Around the Pool discussion. Joining me is Aaron Vogel and Isaac Henderson. Thank you for joining me, gentlemen.
More than welcome.
You guys okay?
We're just great. All right,
Good.
let's talk a little bit about the Puritan influence of the Geneva Study Bible at that time. Obviously not the most recent one made, but the one that was released then, about the notes. To compare that with the King James and just overall influence of Puritanism in England at the time. Woo!
Well, with the Geneva Bible, it was obviously created by. With the Geneva Bible, it was obviously created by Calvin and his associates. So, whenever Calvinism gets into England, they're more doctrinally astute. They're more concerned with a quest for holiness rather than a political pursuit of the church, rather than going to the King James version of the Bible, which, as we all know, did not necessarily hit it off really well with the populace.
No.
With the Puritan ideal, everyone knows that to attach something with the name puritanical is usually to give it a very negative connotation, just because everyone in our day is really opposed to dogmatics. But I wouldn't necessarily say the Puritans were dogmatic, and I feel like Mcgrath kind of points this out, and he's sort of missing the mark. When you say you're a Puritan, at least in that day, it means you are concerned with the Word of God and what it says, and how it applies to your life and how you seek holiness. It's sort of a Leviticus 11:44 situation where it says, "Be holy as I am holy." It's not legalistic, although I feel like later on it became that with the Geneva Bible. And so with the dogmatic approach of the Puritans and the problems that had occurred through the Cromwell Commonwealth and the Long Parliament, then people, I feel like they began to have a really bad taste in their mouth for religiosity, and then they started rejecting all forms of the Puritan movement. It's just one big old pendulum swing to the opposite side.
I know that eventually Anglicanism and Puritanism, they were always so combating. Eventually, it turned out to be a civil war in England, didn't it?
Yeah, the 30 Years' War.
Yeah, led by Oliver Cromwell. You want to add anything, Aaron?
Well, that was a bad time, Peter.
Bad and bloody.
Very bloody.
Well, I know, even with talk about the legalism and what the Puritans were eventually getting themselves into, trying to outlaw, having pudding on Christmas Day, then that was just getting ridiculous.
See, that's the thing. Where exactly is the significance of that, even in Scripture?
None.
Or
I don't know.
it's, I suppose you would call it a case of eisegesis, where I'm stretching my mind right now. I can't imagine any particular instance. There's got to be a theology behind it.
Mm-hmm. And we know eventually all this, like you said, led to a bad taste in the mouths of the populace, and eventually led to the Enlightenment and atheistic movements. Now, you wanted to talk about, the Methodists and the pietist movement that came out of the whole movement. Want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, it's interesting what did come out of that, and the Wesley brothers and their development of hymns, which is fantastic. They wrote some very influential hymns through that. But that whole denomination came out of this movement. Beginning with Catholicism, Protestantism, and then from that branching into all of these other categories. It's just it's another branch out of this, and yet comparing it to the others, especially Anglicanism, it's very different.
It is very different. All right, thank you, gentlemen, for joining us in this very interesting. I'll pull you in. All right. No.
I'll go around.
All right. That's it for this week's episode of the Reform Factor. Coming to you from Sanford, Florida. I'm your host, Peter Birdsall. The word of the day is titty nope. Titty nope. Martin Luther didn't finish his meal. He left a titty nope of food on his plate. Have a good rest of your evening.